Hello, hello, hello. Let me just turn that music down on my headphones. Do let me know if the music's slightly too loud, because it's royalty-free music, yo. You get what you pay for. We're going to be painting Beauregard tonight, and it is hot as hell here, so I do not know how my paint's going to behave. We're going to try and do a bit of a simple paint scheme, and basically something that you can paint along when you get your hands on the Critical Role minis. So I've got a little bit of concept art there. It's the official concept art done for the Critical Role guys. Wonderful it is. Full of lovely colours and vibrancy. So we're going to try and copy that as much as possible. Now, I am going to start with the lightest colour, which is the kind of greeny, sort of aquamarine sort of cloak, and then we're going to try and hit the transitions. So let's stop waffling and start painting. Good evening to everyone. How is everyone? Melting? If you're in the UK, you're melting. I'll tell you that much. So those of you who've watched me paint before, you know that I paint with goggles on. So I am a fraction random when it comes to can I see what's going on in the comments. So I'll periodically sort of check back. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing this is Surf Aqua by Reaper Master Series, and I'm actually just going to mix a little bit of green shade from like a GW shade, because I just want to give it that kind of slightly green undertone, and it also helps to kind of thin the paint out slightly. Yeah, you've seen the Yasha bust. So good, so good. Right, so we're going to work quickly, just to make sure that I'm not getting beasted by the heat. Don't really want the paint drying on me. So fairly wet paint tonight. Obviously when you're painting this model, you can take a little bit more time. But again, those of you who know me know that I don't like hanging about. I've had the advantage, I've painted this model once before, not this exact pose. I did the original kind of working pose, and then we worked with the guys. Marisha had some feedback, wanted to make sure that we were really capturing Beau's character. And one of the things that we realised, and this is quite interesting about the way that we our work kind of flow. When I painted the model, I kind of fed back to Russ that the original model had quite a lot of sort of bead work on it, and it made the model feel a little bit messy just in terms of how much detail there was. And I also remarked that it was a real shame that you know, Yasha hits not Yasha, Beau hits the gym. She's got a six-pack, and it'll be a lot of fun to be able to paint the six-pack. So so we've slightly changed the pose, giving her a much more of a stronger stance, and this is the result. And open the torso right up, so we've got access to that. We've given her less of a smile. In the original model, she had a bit of a smile. So is this the final pose sculpt we'll see from the Kickstarter? Yes, it is. It absolutely was. Someone's in Florida. I wish I was just melting. I guess you're swimming and melting, if I know Florida. Kind of humid there. Does anyone know why we're having this heat wave? It seems to be affecting kind of most of the Western world. Okay, so base coat on. I'm not going to ink wash this because I want to keep this really quite clean. So I'm going to probably highlight and then maybe glaze. Again, I want to keep the techniques as simple as possible. So let's not rinse our brush in my drinking water, because that would be quite painful and miserable. Right, so I'm going to grab a ultramarine for the dark blue aspects of this. And I'm going to try not to let that explode all over my palette. And oh, that's quite dried out. Okay, let's just load that on there. So that's going to need a little bit of rinsing down. So when you're painting, you can't see it, but off camera I've got 2 painting jars, okay, full of water. One is dirty, that's the one I use to wash my brush in, and the other one is clean, that's the one I use to kind of thin my paints down with. Okay, I'm not sure this is going to be quite dark enough. Right, so we know that around the back, this is going to be... So if you see what I'm doing here is, notice how I'm pushing the brush down and pulling it down to the edge, right? This is because when your brush leaves the model, the last place it touches is the thickest part of paint. So all I'm doing there is I'm literally just pushing it down. So imagine this is the bottom of the thing. I'm pushing it down and I'm just pulling it like this. Yeah, push, pull, and then off. So push it on, pull down, off. All right. And you can see, sure, the transition's a little bit strong, but you know, while you're learning how to paint, this is that's, you know, going to get the job done. So what we can do now is we can go in, and where we have already given the transition, I'm now going to paint within that. So I'm not going right up to the edge. What I'm doing is now strengthening the very edge, but I'm not going anywhere near the bit where it hits the lighter colour. So what I want is a really strong blue at the edges of the cloak. Yeah? Give the old brush a rinse. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab a bit more paint and we're going to just water it down a little bit, okay? And this we're going to use to just smooth out that transition. So don't make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush. And then I'm just going to pull it down. And this time I'm going to make sure I'm just smoothing over where it's going to be. Now, because this paint is quite runny, it's actually going to be quite see-through. All right, and I just smooth that little kind of transition off. And you can do this as many times as you like until you kind of get a smooth transition. We're just going to let that dry off, and I'm going to go around and do the front here. So let's just hit Beau. I'll do this and I'll catch up with me in comments. So again, I'm using the thin paint just to paint over the transition, and then while it's still wet, this time I'm just going to go in with a slightly damp brush, and I'm just going to soften the edges. All right. We'll let that dry off, and then we'll go back in and do that again. In the meantime, we'll go back to the back. We'll grab another bit of the thin down paint, and we're just going to go over that transition piece. All right. And then I'm going to turn them all over, and with a slightly damp brush, I use spit, you can use water if you want. I'm literally just feathering the edge, okay? So all I'm doing is just smoothing that edge out. Now obviously when you're painting these minis, if you want to try this, which is basically a technique called feathering, grab yourself YouTube videos, stick this one on the background, remind yourself how to do it. It just takes a little bit of practice. Hopefully you can see that transition's coming through. Have a quick look at the comments. It's warm in Yorkshire. Is this final pose? Problem in the UK is, yeah, I was just chatting with Charles earlier actually. We've got no aircon. And you think, oh, every year you think I might go out and buy some aircon, and then you just realise that it's just not worth it. You just end up spending 200 or 300, 400 quid on an aircon unit and use it, you know, what, maybe a couple of weeks a year. Yeah. Just not worth it. The trouble is in the UK is we're not set up for much really. We're not set up for snow because it wrecks all our roads and our trains. We're not set up for like the summer. We're all right when it rains. I guess. Okay. We lost power, slept in a puddle on the tile floor with my dogs. Nice. The dogs had plenty of sweaty meat to lick. It was a trade-off. Lovely. Do I have any favourite miniature painters? That's a good question. I tell you, I do like... I love Ben Comets. I think he's a really cool guy. And I like the way he paints. And I like the way his videos are. I think he's super cool. One of my mates who I think is a phenomenal painter who people might not have heard of, but he is just getting better and better, is a guy over in Australia called Trent Dennison. He's just phenomenal and a top bloke, so well worth kind of checking out his stuff. I think we obviously work at Steamforge with people like Angel Heraldes. Angel's another top guy, and you know, comes out with just some of the most amazing paint jobs in such a short space of time. It's really inspiring. Some of the stuff he's done recently is just phenomenal. But I think there's some awesome YouTubers out there. But the trouble is, you know what it's like when you're watching YouTube. You just I don't really pay attention to as much as I should anyway. Okay, just smoothing that transition over. Yeah, just getting those key colours in place. Alright, so now we're going to go in and get a little bit of highlighting action going. So I'm just going to grab, what am I going to grab? So Reaper Master Series, this is, you can't see it, it's called Linen White. This is like an off-white colour. If you're going to be highlighting with white, don't use pure white. Use this Linen White, and that'll just help it feel a little bit more natural. So I'm just going to give myself a little transition. And then I'm going to basically try and make this feel like cloth. So I'm actually going to kind of cross-hatch across the top of the folds. So I just want it to be like a bit of a diffuse highlight. Thanks for the follow, guys. Glad you found. Hopefully you'll find these videos super useful. I'm going to be aiming to do as many as I can of all the CR models. It's part of my job, is to make sure I get to put paint on the models that we make as a company. I've always maintained that Steamforge is a company run by gamers for gamers, and we really believe that the models we make, well, we know that they are fun to paint because I've painted every single one, not necessarily always on camera. So that's quite a bold transition, but again, if you're learning paint, then don't worry about your highlights feeling quite bold. We can smooth those out. I'm just going to give them some fairly crisp highlights on the upper surfaces. See what I did there? I just licked my brush and then just basically softened that out. So if you make a mistake, if you're quick, you can kind of get in and you can fix it with a little bit of spit. Usual kind of legal disclaimer: if you eat paint and you get sick, it's not my fault. You're an adult. You can use water if you want. Eat paint at your own reconnaissance, not mine. Who eats paint in the chat? Come on, admit it. I do. Okay. cool. Let's get around the front. Primary colour is this darker blue, so I'm just going to grab a little bit of the white. Just create myself a little gradient. You'll see when I'm painting, I kind of dip in and out of like the base tone, the mid tone, and the highlight. I don't really tend to paint to a formula. Just paint based on what I think the model needs at that time. I'm just blocking out some highlights here. I'm going to grab a bit of the very high highlight, just kind of clip the top here, just where the fabric would be pulled quite tight, and just pull a line down. Excellent. Alright, now because we're going to do these little side straps here, we don't need like a mid highlight because we've just not got enough room to do a decent transition. So all we're going to do is go straight in with our highest highlight and just kind of touch the edges of it. Really struggling to keep my paint at a decent consistency. I've filled my wet palette up, but it's dying in this heat. So this is a challenge. Okay, that's not too shabby. Alright, so that's probably... that'll do. I think I could kind of go in and smooth that off afterwards. Probably make these a little bit stronger. I'll probably hit them with some glazes, but because I've had to paint like quite light colours and I've got to go in with a dark colour, I'd rather paint the dark colour now and see whether I kind of mess up or not. If I do, then I haven't messed up a perfectly finished surface, if you know what I mean. So let's just check. Right, so all of the rest of the cloth on her is going to be this dark colour. This is a special concoction that you can't get. It's called Midnight Blue. There's a P3 paint called Coal Black. So if you do a search for Coal Black, it's a very, very similar paint to that. So things to watch here when I'm painting is I'm being quite careful going up near to the edges of the models, but I'm really using the physics of the brush. I'm pushing it into the recesses, and I'm letting the bristles basically paint me my straight lines. So in this bit here, I'm going to push in, let the brush sort of splay out, and then try and catch all the corners. So into the middle, push, and I'm push. All right, and then this is the awkward bit. Is when you're painting around something. There you go, not too shabby. And I'm just letting the contours of the model do the work for me. Right, so our shoes are going to be brown, so that's fine. And so that means we don't have to do those bits. So let's just get in here. The other thing that's interesting, as I'm painting this darker colour in, is this is slightly advanced sort of colour theory, but notice how much brighter the light colours become when I paint a dark colour next to them. Right? It suddenly makes them feel a lot more vibrant and alive, and that's purely by creating contrast, and it's just colour contrast. So you can really, for example, cheat if you want to paint a model with great whites, is you don't actually need to paint white perfectly. What you can do is just paint the white next to something like a really strong bold colour, so like a red or something like that, and the red will actually make your white pop. Okay, so we're just going to block this out, and then I'm going to get some flesh in there and then tidy up any bits that I might have messed up, and then we'll just get a little flesh wash going on that. What we got on our arms? Our arms are the same colours. That makes life a lot easier, doesn't it? So So you'll see I'm keeping my brush damp when I load it up with a bit of paint. I'm certainly not keeping the brush soaking in paint, so as I'm touching the model it's not all flooding off of my brush. But I'm basically not having to dip back in the pot too much. And as you can see, I have to start working the brush. That means that I'm starting to run out of paint, and what I really should do is go back and reload the brush up. So if you're painting a model and the paint isn't flowing off easily, it means that you need to just go and reload your brush. Alright, so see the difference there? I'm barely having to touch the model now and the paint's just flowing off. Alright, it's all about getting the right consistency and the right amount of paint on your actual brush. Good, good, good. That looks cool. What's going on with her belt? Right, so her sash probably ought to be blue as well. Alright. Let's go and fix that. I think this is the hardest thing about painting minis is sometimes working out what bits are what. That's why it's always handy having a bit of reference art. There you go. That's cool. Right, let's have a quick look in the old questions, see what's going on. Painted dogs on the Kickstarter from me. They're actually not. No, they're from... oh god, I better check, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. Someone help me out in my private chat. Where's Russ? I'll post a link to the amazing painter who does them for us. He just reached out and said, hey, I'd love to paint those minis, can I? And we went, sure. Sounds great. I am going to do some of the minis, maybe this week, but I need to get these models done before Gen Con. So I believe the guys are playing at Gen Con, and 5,000 people are going to watch them play D&D live, which is amazing when you stop and think about it. Me and Russ managed to snag some VIP seats, which is pretty badass. Kind of happy with that. But I'd love them to use the actual final pose minis, so we're going to make sure that we get what they need. Russ is in the stream. Russ, tell us. Oh yeah, thank you, Marcus Stroh. You can find him on Facebook, which is where he found us. Yeah, he is awesome chap, and I believe a professional painter, so quite possibly available for hire. But you don't want to get someone to paint your minis for you. You want to learn how to paint them yourself. Well, actually, buy 2 sets, right? Get 1 set professionally painted and get 1 set painted by yourself. So there's only one way to get good at anything, painting included, and that's just to do it. Okay, so we're just hitting up the browns here. So yeah, I'm just base coating. Now here's the thing, if you're following the official kind of colour scheme, then that's fine. If you're making your own colour scheme up, that's also fine. Russ and I have quite long conversations about this. Russ is a huge fan of taking a single part of a model and finishing it. I'm a huge fan of taking the entire model and blocking out all of the colour. And the reason I do that, I think, is I need to be able to see what the actual colour scheme looks like overall before I can kind of commit to finishing the paint job. Okay, so I'm going to grab a little bit of walnut brown. So I'm going to go with two colour browns on this particular paint job. When you're painting 2 different types of brown on a mini, try and make sure that you have a really strong differential, because if they're too close, they will just blur into one, and honestly, you might as well just use one brown. Okay, so this is a really good example. Just the right amount of paint on your brush means I can paint that whole staff with basically just one move. So I'm pushing the brush into the corner and I'm just pulling it up. Alright. Yeah, little dot on the top. Job's a good one. So now we just need to get some flesh. What colour is her hair? Alright, I might actually do her hair with this dark brown. So, another kind of, I don't know if this is colour theory or colour composition. The more colours you have on a model, the worse it's going to look overall. Think that, alright? So, if you end up painting a model and it has more colours than a 1980s website, and those of you around in the 80s will know exactly what I'm talking about, then it's going to look like a bit of a mess. So this is why I'm trying to keep to quite a limited palette. And as you can see over here, I've got a couple of blues, a couple of browns. Gives me a much stronger colour composition. I wish Russ was here. He's so much cleverer than I am when it comes to explaining stuff like that. Right, let's grab a flesh colour. So again, any old flesh colour will do. I'm being lazy and reaching for, I can only apologise, paints that you guys can't get hold of at the moment. This is just basically a Caucasian skin, and then I have a white rose style colour for my highlight. Okay, but GW do fleshes. Every single paint range in the world does a flesh range, and just find that kind of medium tone. Now, Beau has a slightly oriental feel to her skin, so she's got some nice olive undertones. So we're going to basically grab our camo shade again, and this will again help with the harmony. So don't forget, in this light blue we actually have these kind of green subtones, and I'm just going to use that just to thin that paint out. And what that's going to do is give me a green undertone. Alright, don't have to do it. It's one of those kind of really subtle sort of little differences. So, fairly watery paint. I'm probably going to be looking at a couple of coats here. Oh, I've got the shakes, look at that. Right, so you don't need a steady hand to paint, you just need to know how to paint. I've got the shakes. Have a slurp of water. Alright. Okay, so we're going to have to do a little bit of tidying up action there, but we kind of knew that already, that's fine. Same up here, let's just get this on. So it's worth pointing out, the way I undercoat my models, I spray them black first, and then I spray them white from above. And what that does is the white basically gives me an idea of where the highlights should go, but it also means that effectively my paint is kind of pre-tinted, because obviously painting something that's sort of see-through over a dark colour will look very different from the exact same paint painted over something that's very bright. Yeah? So if all my darkness is from the underneath and all my light is from above, and I'm painting the exact same colour on, I'm inheriting a lot of this sort of pre-shading is what it's called. Cool, alright, so let's just get these muscles going. And then what we are going to do is hit these with a bit of an ink wash. That'll just help give us a little bit of definition and something to work with. Now, the thing to bear in mind is when you're painting female muscles and skin, is the way that female flesh works in real life is it has a slightly different fatty makeup, right? Trying to be as delicate as I can, but the female anatomy stores fat in a different way, and what that means is generally the skin is a little bit more translucent than male skin, and that translates through to the muscles not being as sharply defined. And I'm talking very generally. Obviously, there are ladies out there who are absolutely ripped and stacked, a bit like Beau. But even those, when you look at them in photos on Tinternet and in sort of bodybuilding magazines, they're still not got the sharp contrast definitions as the male physique does. So, what does this mean? Why am I waffling on about this? Is basically to make female flesh stay looking female flesh and not looking weird, is you don't actually need as strong a highlight as you would do if you're painting a male mini. That's... Cool, right, we're going to let that dry off and we're going to get a couple of washes. If Matt wants to invite me, he has to call me because my Skype is being weird. Oh, cool. Okay, let's see if we can do that. This might be glorious or it might be... Can I call you on Slack, Russ? Let's try Skype. See if that happens. Right, hello mate.
Did it work?
Vaguely, I just need to make sure you're coming through my headphones. There you go. Now hopefully everyone else should be able to hear you. Say something? No, I can't hear you. Let's just turn... Who's still there? Oh, I don't know. Let's just kill the music for a second while we try and work out where Russ is. Say something, Russ. Oh no. Try him on Slack. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate.
Hello. All right. Let me just see if you're coming through. Say something.
Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Oh, lovely. That sounds awesome.
Great. Awesome.
Good.
Yeah. My Skype for those watching does not like Matt and only Matt. Oh, hang on. I'm getting a weird echo. Let me just mute Twitch.
Yeah. You mute Twitch.
My Skype won't connect to Matt and won't let me call Matt and crashes if I answer a call from Matt. Everyone else is fine, but it doesn't like Matt.
At least this is the story that Russ has come up with, and he's sticking with it for the time being.
Charles says, "You quiet." I wonder if that's
I'm quiet or you're quiet.
No, I'm quiet. Well, I don't know if that's information or an instruction.
I'll turn you up in the mix. How about that? You sound very loud in my ears.
Yeah, I sound very loud to myself, but who can say?
Yeah. Are you melting? I want to be terribly English just for a second and complain about the heat.
Mate.
Yeah, right?
It's crazy. It is crazy. I just came into my office to take this call, and for the people playing along at home, Steamforge very kindly got me a new laptop, which I can use at Gen Con. And it's really, really beefy and amazing. And I've been doing a lot of sort of logistical work today, getting stuff ready for production. So whilst that's been happening, I've been setting my laptop up. And I just came in, and it has literally just baked itself into blue screen of death. So I've only had it 24 hours, and it's already cooked.
Ow.
So that's good.
Ow. At risk of asking a leading question, because I know the answer, but what do you need your laptop at Gen Con for, Russ?
Oh, I think I might be doing a little bit of the old, a bit of live sculpting,
Bit of live
Matt.
sculpting, fantastic.
Bit of live sculpting.
What are you going to be sculpting, Russ? Doggies.
Well, yeah. Sadly, the amount of people who've messaged me asking if they can come and see doggies at Gen Con, and the answer, unfortunately, guys, is I'll talk. You can't stop me talking about doggies, even if people tried. But doggies won't be at Gen Con, sadly.
There is
But
absolutely a law about trying to stop people talking about dogs.
too right. But no, I'm going to be sculpting, well, all sorts of things. But I think it's safe to say that there's going to be a fairly strong Critical Role theme to the kind of things that I'm going to be working on.
Yeah.
Have we told people about the geography of our Gen Con
I
situation
don't
via
believe
the Grit Roll?
I don't believe we have. No, don't think so.
Is that something we can say? Is that I don't think that's privileged information, is it?
I think anyone can find that information on the floor plan.
If you know how to use a map.
Which is
So
freely available.
okay, this is one of those amazing pieces of serendipity that it just shows that this was meant to be, because the Gen Con map, neither we nor Crit Roll actually get to say where in the floor we're going to be. Obviously, it's all allocated by the Gen Con gods, who I assume sit around wearing hoods and chanting in a corner. And in a room with over 4,000 booths, our booth and the Crit Roll booth are about 8 to 10 yards apart.
We're
We're
kind of next to each other.
Yeah, we're kind of opposite each other across a little tiny sort of gantry walkway, corridory bit, whatever you want to call that. So we'll just be able to. It's going to be really great because get to see all our mates, so see all our friends.
Yep, and swap cups of tea and sandwiches and all that kind of, because we're just going to be sitting around with nothing to do, right?
Absolutely. There's very little for us to be doing at Gen Con this year. We've got no real things to get on with. Oh my god, mate. We are so busy right now. It's crazy. Charles says I can talk about where they are and the plan. We can't tell them how many releases we'll have.
Oh.
Or CRA.
Oh, did Critical Role do an announcement earlier today?
They did. They did a swag announcement. It was really cool. I'm very excited because they've announced a load of really, really good swag for people with VIP tickets to the live show.
Oh, and who's got VIP tickets?
Why? I believe that I do.
And I believe that I do.
I believe I have 2 spare Critical Role live show tickets. I'm not sure what we're going to do with that yet.
First come, first serve. Come and find Russ at Gen Con.
Yep.
If you haven't got a ticket, he might hook you up. Right, so just while we were chatting there, a moth has flown into my belly button. That's not good. So we'll get him out, and then I've just done a little ink wash over the base colours, as is my want. I think because I want to put a little bit of definition into some of these folds, I'm going to hit with a green. So the main ink wash that I've gone with is Agrax Earthshade, which is a brown. This one I'm going to go with a green, and I'm just going to kind of come into the shadows. So I'm really not trying to change the colour too much. I'm just trying to put this into the shadows.
Technical question for you while you're doing that, Matt.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, the new camera looks great. So much clarity compared to the old one.
Oh, I'm so much happy with it.
That's great. So, how do you find painting in this kind of extreme heat?
It's challenging. So you need to just be aware that it is hot and your paint is going to behave differently, right? What it means is your paint's going to dry a lot faster on your palette. So if you don't use a wet palette, try using a wet palette. If you do use a wet palette, just make sure it's topped up nicely. But what you'll find is the paint will just won't. There's like a holding time for paints, and holding time on the miniature is a lot shorter, so it just dries on the mini a lot faster. So if you need to, you can just put a bit of mixing medium into your paint to give it a bit more hold time. If you're trying to do wet blends, but because this is a fairly straightforward video, I'm not trying to do too many sort of dramatic things. I'm just basically watering the paint down a little bit more.
Cool. So you don't find you need to use like drying retarders or flow improvers or anything like that?
No, I mean, no. I think if I was painting, here's the thing. I think if I was painting a mini that I felt that was necessary, I probably wouldn't paint in this heat.
No, that's fair.
So I would, unless I lived in a country where this was the heat, then yeah, you would have to look at drying retarders.
Yeah.
Or adapting a paint style that doesn't need it. I mean, as you know, my paint style tends to rely a fair bit on kind of blending on the mini.
Yes.
So I do a lot of
I paint in a similar way, and I think you need a lot of flow.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if I lived in a country that was this hot all the time, I'd adapt my painting technique, and I'd never buy resin miniatures.
Right, cool. How's she look? All right, isn't she?
She's looking pretty good.
Okay, so let's go in and start working on the flesh tones. I think. So I'm just going to go
I like
back to
how
the base
bright
mix.
you've gone here, by the way.
I was chatting earlier about this is color theory. So this is putting a dark color next to a lightish color, and it makes the light color feel a lot lighter.
It does, and it also allows you to create really strong areas of separation, which is important in letting the model be readable. And if anyone who watches Critical Role has seen any of the Iron Tusk miniatures up close, they do look peculiarly bright and oversaturated. But that's because he's very cleverly painted specifically for them to appear on camera from a distance of 3 or 4 feet. And so what he's looking for there is blocks of strong color separation so that the models are readable at a distance. It's an interesting thing because sculpting miniatures already is an interesting exercise in scale. And then painting takes that to the next level, and then also having to think about it appearing on camera just adds another little wrinkle into that little formula. So it's quite an interesting challenge, I think, painting for a sort of on-stream camera kind of application. It's a bit different to the sort of thing you'd normally have to do as a gamer.
Yeah. So let's just talk about how to paint faces, right? Did you see the link I sent out earlier of the painting faces video I did about 2 or 3 years ago?
You asking me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I'll send
that's
it
only
over
because
to you.
I haven't been. I literally got in from walking the dog, so I haven't looked at Twitter for a little while.
Oh, right. I think I sent it out the other. It was over the weekend, but it does. I'll send it over to you. But basically, it's knowing where to highlight on a face, right? So key areas are basically the top of the cheekbone next to the corner of the eye. So that's always an area. So this is the area that I'm touching here. That's always an area that's going to be strong. So you want to make sure that's got one of your highlights. Cross the top of the cheekbone up to the ear, yeah, and then leave a little hollow where the temple is, right? So top of the skull, and then it comes round. And then here, we don't want it to have too much of a 5 o'clock shadow, because she's a lady. So we're just going to block that out and not leave that too dark. Now, top of the lip, alright? So only the top lip gets this, and then the tip of the nose. Alright, and once we've done the tip of the nose, turn the model round, grab another bit of paint, and then I want you to kind of just put a little dot in the bridge of the nose and leave a gap between the tip and the bridge. Alright, and that gives your nose a little bit of definition. And then either side of the pinch at the top of the nose, put 2 dots like that, yeah? And then you can see the paint drying on the model and it just fades in. But what it's doing is just kind of giving you this hint of anatomy. So now I'm going into the bottom lip and I'm just dabbing into the bottom lip. Now the bottom lip is always brighter than the top lip, and that's because it's facing up towards the sun and it catches the sun. Then we're going to catch the chin. Go back, re-emphasize the nose, across the top of the eyebrows and the eyelids. Alright, and that is just using the base colour that we used to paint them, to just base colour it, and then before we ink washed it. Alright?
That is really, really nice, mate. So, what I'm wondering, and I'm sure people watching are wondering, is it your intention to do something about the fact that her skin tone is very sort of monochromatic at the moment?
Yes. Yes, that's the last stage, and that's where we really breathe a bit of life into the mini. So all I want to do here is get nearly broke our staff. Then, what we want to do is make sure we get in just where the key highlights are going. So now I'm going in with a highlight, and I'm just catching all of those areas that I talked about. So to stop the skin feeling monochromatic, I'm going to go in with some ink glazes, and
Nice.
they are going to breathe a little bit of life in the model, and they're going to help kind of break it up a bit.
Whilst Matt's doing that, I'll just say welcome to. We've had a few more people start following the channel, so it's lovely to have you. Welcome aboard.
Yeah. So if you've just joined us, this is basically Russ and I both work for Steamforged Games. This is a little bit of fun that we do. So we call it painting in polygons, and this is where we get to kind of just mess about with ideas that, it's like a creative outlet for us. But Russ does some fantastic sculpting video and streams, and whatever Russ sculpts, I try and paint as a general rule. So that is largely the aim of the stream. So if you fancy seeing a little bit behind the curtain, how minis get sculpted and designed, and then how the exact same minis then get painted, this is the place to come and hang out.
If anyone's not aware, we have just launched our first independent minis project. It's on Kickstarter at the moment.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure several of the people in the chat will be aware, but in case anyone's not, we have a project called Dungeons and Doggies, which was based on a crazy idea. We have intelligent dog characters for D&D. We've got a Kickstarter out with dogs, minis, rules companion. There's an adventure in there. There's some amazing. We found the most phenomenal, wonderful artist who has been a real creative powerhouse for the project. We've been out some D&D Beyond support. We've got loads more happening, and the project has gone absolutely bananas. I mean, we're at like nearly 1,500% funding. It's just the enthusiasm for it has been just mind-blowing. It's so exciting. So thank you. Somebody's posted a link to a couple of people have posted links to it. Go check it out if you've not seen it. It's great. We're really proud of it. I'm super happy with how things have gone, because it's kind of my baby. How large sculptures you base the minis on generally? So one of the interesting things about sculpting digitally, in case anyone didn't realize, we sculpt using a computer process, and we 3D print, or in the case of miniatures produced in plastic, we use a CNC tooling system. So because we're sculpting digitally, we can make our miniatures effectively any size that we want to. So I have a series of armatures, and so we can sculpt a miniature, and in theory, we could give you the same sculpt at, 15 mil, 35 mil, 55 mil, and just change up some of the detailing. In fact, I've got I've done a number of collector's busts, not in a similar to, yes, in a similar way to the Yasha bust. I've done a number of busts for the Guild Ball range and now Yasha, and we start that process with the original miniature sculpt, and then we use that as a reference and a building block to build our more detailed and slightly differently proportioned bust. And so if you come and take a look at some of the busts work that we've done, it's a really good example of the versatility of digital sculpting. I'm really proud of the bust work that we've done. I'm super happy with Yasha.
Yeah.
Oh, am I super Dalek-y? I'm really sorry. It's this bad microphone I've got plugged in. I do apologise, and also my terrible internet connection, which is legendary within our company.
It is. Yeah. There's no other way to say it, Russ. You've got bad internet.
I have. Well, I made the mistake of buying a brand new house on a brand new estate, and apparently brand new houses don't, like, in the UK, if you want super fast fibre, you have to live on a farm in the middle of nowhere. where the government spends loads of money on hooking you up. If you buy a brand new house in the middle of a city, you get a piece of string and some copper cups.
Do you know? I was reading an article the other day. Internet speed is now one of the most important decision-making points when it comes to buying a house.
Oh, yeah, I can totally believe that. It
Yeah,
was one of the first questions I asked.
it's funny, isn't it? How the world changes.
I think soapbox moment. I think it should be treated as a utility. It's that important. It should be treated like electrical power or water now.
Well, interestingly, as a country, we are falling behind. It apparently,
Yeah.
our average internet speed is not as good as some of our European friends.
Well, my brother-in-law, who is recently returned from living in Korea for several years, and so he's lived in the land of pro gaming as a mainstream television shows, and he's like he says the internet we've got here is like medieval compared to what he's used to in Korea.
Yeah. Thanks for the follow, guys. Thanks for the cheer. That's always very gratefully received.
And another, yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
As we say, this is a bit of fun for Russ and I. Any kind of contributions, we just plough straight back into tech and equipment. So, hence
This the camera upgrade,
the new camera. Well, here's the thing about the cameras. I actually had the camera kicking around years and years ago. I picked up a GoPro, and like a lot of people thought I am going to make the next amazing kind of videos, and then realised how much harder it was to actually do. So it kind of promptly started gathering dust. And then I was chatting with someone from Critical Role who basically told me the kind of setup that they would recommend I use, and it was a GoPro. So I'm like, oh, I've actually got one of those. So I just had to buy a couple of lenses and a little kind of doodad that basically takes the GoPro and plugs it straight into a USB and lets it act like a webcam, so OBS can see it. But, yeah. Right. So on this note, on the necklace, so I pre-undercoated it just so it would have shading, and then I've gone in with quite a dry paint. This paint is now practically dried on my palette, despite it being a wet palette. This is how hot it is, but it's to my advantage. It means I can kind of just lightly brush it over the top, and I don't have to worry about it basically running off the sides. And because I pre-shaded it with like a dark colour, it looks like it's shaded. So I'm gonna just go in same technique but with a lighter colour and just hint at a highlight on these. There you go.
Okay, I'm about to attempt a live mic swap, so this may be about to go horribly wrong. Bear with me.
This is gonna be amazing. Okay, so we're going back to the tunic, the dark tunic. I have got a highlight at this far end. I've got a mid-tone in the middle, and I've got my original colour. So I'm just going to take from the mid-tone, and I am going to basically just block out the volume. So start at the top and pull it down. Yeah, like we did with the coat. So I'm just pulling down. Where the brush leaves the model is where the paint's going to be thickest. Thin that paint out just a little bit because.
Can anybody hear me?
Oh wow, that is amazing. Well, I can hear you. Okay. I'm just going to come in over the top of this. Yeah. So these are simple techniques, Russ, you would say? Nothing I'm doing here is terribly complicated. It's base color. And then it's basically generally going back in with the exact same color.
That's awesome. You guys can hear me and it sounds much better. The downside is I don't appear to be able to hear anything else. So I'm just going to try and get my headphones working. And then life is good.
We can absolutely hear you, says he, knowing full well that you can't hear us. This kind of is the opportunity moment. So if anyone's got anything they want to get off their chest about Russ, say it now. He won't be able to hear us. I bet you he's just got the volume turned down in his headphone. Someone's telling him that he's got the volume turned down in his headphone. Okay, so her hands are covered in wraps, right? Do not try and paint every single wrap individually. It will drive you insane, all right? Just basically follow the wraps that go over the top. So we've done a mid-tone. I'm going to go in. I'm going to grab the highlight. And this is quite watery, so I'm going to just wick it off on my thumb, so I don't have too much paint on there. And because this is cloth, I'm just going to just touch it onto the cloth and then just sort of maneuver it into position. Again, where my brush touches the model last is where the majority of the paint's going to be. I've just licked my brush to kind of basically soak a bit of paint off and then just hoover it off the model. That's a little bit on the runny side, and that I can't control that paint, so I'm just going to come over, get another highlight mix that's a fraction thicker. I need it to... Ooh! I need it to be able to run off the model, run off the brush. There we go, that's better. See how that behaves a little bit more differently? A little bit more differently. English is my primary language. Okay. Now we're just going to come in over the top of these pantaloons, because that's probably where we're going to catch the most light. Top of the fold, and again just pulling down towards where I want the highlight to be. Yeah. If you're not too heavy-handed, it won't basically drown the model, or it won't drown the highlight. Bear in mind that the paints that we're painting with are translucent. All acrylic is translucent. And it only gets opaque the more you paint. So when you first put a colour on, it is going to dry quite see-through, and like what I'm doing here, if I want to strengthen the colour, I just go in and paint the same colour again over the top, and where I put another layer, that colour will now be slightly stronger. That makes sense. I'm going to hit that. I'm just trying to hit the tops of the bandages. Don't need to worry about it too much in here, because that's going to be inside the crook of her arm. Okay. Hit the top bandage.
Yeah, I think I've managed to completely kill the audio at my end by trying to swap the microphone over.
We can hear you.
On the plus side, everyone can hear me.
We like the old mic, where we can actually talk. Okay. Looking nice and bright. Right, let's quickly catch up with comments while I let my paints dry off a bit. Try the volume on the headphone. Come on. We're both sets of headphones, one for the sound, one for the mic. That I like. That is a clever idea. Harling Quinn, so happy with the doggies. When Russ sent me the Freya sculptures, when I found out I had no other option but to rehome my dog Freya. Oh yeah, poor Freya. We love you, Chris, and we love Freya, and we're glad that Freya lives on in our direct day-to-day lives. Is it too small to dry brush? Is that why you highlight this way? So I do use dry brushing. I don't think dry brushing is a bad technique. I'm not snobby at all. I don't dry brush when it's really tiny like this, because it is very difficult to kind of control quite where the dry brush goes, where the highlights go. But we could, you know, for example, if you wanted to, you could dry brush this sort of surface at the back across the cloth. But things like fur, things like armor, I would absolutely dry brush. But on this instance, I just want to make sure I've got control over the over where I can put the highlights. It's
kind of a second level way of thinking about things, isn't it? To go about what the texture of something is, as well as the color and shading.
Yeah, yeah. But it's also as well. You're 100% right, but it's also a degree of scale as well. And I think a trap that I see a lot of people fall into is they try and paint every detail that's on the Mini, and I think sometimes that really works against you because it can make the Mini look quite messy. So, for example, across the chest, obviously the upper surface of the breasts are going to catch an awful lot of light. If you look underneath, Russ has actually sculpted in a lot of tension kind of lines into the vest top that I'm not actually really trying to capture. I'm hinting at them, but I want the most of the light to fall on the upper surface of the chest.
There's a very sort of GW style of painting, isn't there? That's like everything comes to almost like a crisp line or a crisp edge.
Yeah.
And it's showing off really cool skill, but it's not a realistic way of painting.
It's a very, very GW style.
Oh yeah, they've definitely got a style of their own.
Yeah. But I don't, and again, I've kind of developed over the years, I guess, my own style, and I tend to err on the side of realism rather than my paint jobs tend to make a model look more on the realistic scale rather than cartoony scale, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right, so she's not a million miles away from done at this stage. I think what we'll do is we'll go in and tidy up her face and make that a little bit more exciting. So for that, we're going to grab some ink. So this is scale 75 ink, just a red. You can use any ink you like, but you need an ink. A wash just won't do it. You want the vibrancy of the ink. So I put a single dot on the palette over here in the bottom right corner. I'm literally just going to touch it with my brush, and I'm going to pour a bunch of paint, and then I'm actually going to put quite a big dollop of water in there, and I'm going to try and water it down quite a bit. So what
brand of ink do you work with?
That's scale 75.
That is scale 75.
Yeah.
Okay.
So compared to the original colour, I'm probably about 1 part in 25, 1 part in 30 maybe. If I grab a piece of paper towel, you can see how light that is compared to the original ink. Yeah. So I'm just gonna clean my brush and make sure that it's loaded with spit, and then I'm just gonna put a little bit of paint, a little bit of this ink in the top part of the brush, and then I'm gonna wick it away so it's not really loaded. And now what we're going to do is we are going to go in either side of her nose, and I'm just going to touch it in either side of her nose. Okay, we're going to let that dry.
And this will dry very quickly, won't it?
It should do, yeah.
Little tip for anyone who is starting out using ink and is a bit worried about it affecting the paint job that they've done and point of no return. Winsor & Newton drawing inks stay sort of water soluble. You can go back in and work over them. Right. You can rescue a paint job.
That's a good tip. That's the hardest thing with inks, is mostly they're not, once they've dried, they're permanent, aren't they?
They are. I do a lot with the Winsor & Newton because you have to seal the model afterwards, but you can do a lot of blending out and subtle things with it.
Right, I'm just going to go back into the side of the nose, strengthen that, and then I'm going to pull this across the top of the cheeks. Now, if you think about this on a human face, male or female, blood vessels go across the top of the cheeks. This is why your cheeks get rosy red when you are cold, or when you're aroused or angry or emotional, because all the blood kind of flows to your face, and that's where it flows to, why you end up with rosy cheeks. So we're just going to hint at the fact that there is that. Now this is a really subtle effect, and it really doesn't only materialise until you've let the paint dry. So this is why I'm being very patient about letting the paint dry before I go in and put another layer on, because you can always add another layer of a glaze. Very, very hard to get rid of it if you've gone too much and you don't want your model to look like Coco the Clown. Okay, so just a little hint there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the model around so I can actually just lean my brush against the lips. I don't want it to look like she's wearing lipstick, but I want her lips to look a little bit redder than the rest of her skin.
Got a request if you can bring her into the camera a bit closer while she's drying it. And the thing to remember is this is quite a quick paint job, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know what the focus is like. Is that focus okay?
Yeah, that's not bad at all, actually.
All right, I'll try and paint it there so you can kind of see what's going on.
That's perfect.
All right. So again, side of the nose, and I'm just building up this colour, and now I'm going to pull it down the side of her mouth. Yeah, that little kind of crease line that comes down, and I'm just touching it lightly in, and I'm just going to smooth out the bottom. I'm going to turn it around and do the same thing again. So side of the nose, pull it down the side of the mouth. All right, less is more. Let that dry. We're going to do a little bit in the middle of a furrow. Okay, and I think she just needs a fraction more just going into her ears. Ears are another part of the body that have a lot of blood flow going to them. That's why your ears get red when people are talking about you, etc. Okay, now at this stage, what I would do if this was a male is I would then do a blue glaze in this cheek area. But we obviously don't want Beau to look too manly, so we will take a little bit of the green wash that we had. We'll mix that with a little bit of the red to just give ourselves a green tinted red colour. And we're just going to use that just to kind of feed into the shadow a little bit, alright? And that's all I'm going to do with that. Right, so same thing again, we can just kind of hit some of our muscle groups just to kind of give a little bit of red in there, and just kind of helps the flesh look like it's alive, and it just breaks up the monochrome feel to it. So I'm just basically glazing into the recesses. And it's quite a subtle effect. The camera probably isn't picking up a lot, but I'll take some pictures afterwards and stick them up on Twitter, and hopefully you'll be able to see what it's like. I mean, this is a purely optional step as well. I mean, most people could quite happily stop before this bit, and your model will look absolutely fine. And that's probably Beau done. I mean, as Russ says, this is a bit of a quick and straightforward paint job. Not trying to do anything super dramatic or clever. We did a little bit of kind of glaze blending at the top there, where the light blue transitions into the dark blue. And since then, all we've done is basically base coat and highlight is literally all we've done. And now what?
And I assume you'll want to hit a base up with, I mean, she's like a midnight blue on the show. Were you going to make the base match that?
No, so what I am doing with the bases is I'm basing all the minis on the same. So yeah, let's base her up. So I use another GW product. This is a texture paint. It's basically a paint, a base color paint that has a little bit of sand mixed in with it. I grab a slightly older brush, and I grab basically a dollop of this stuff. Make sure it's wet so I can actually paint it on. And sorry, do that on camera so you can see. I'm literally just grabbing a dollop of the paint, mixing it in the lid so it's quite runny. Another dollop of paint, dollop of water. And then I'm going to take the thick off, and now we can kind of just grab it. And then what we're going to do is grab the mini, and I'm just going to put it a dollop on there, and then again same technique. So I'm just pushing it in where the feet are, like that, and then just making sure I'm putting a bit of the texture. Now you can do the same technique with. So in the UK we have a product called Polyfiller. I don't know if that's available in the States. It's basically the stuff you use to repair a plaster wall. You can kind of grab that and water that down and add it to paint, or you can grab a tiny little bit of really fine grit and add that to your paint.
I want to say that the UK version, sorry, the US version is called Spackle, but I might be wrong.
I think, yeah. I don't know if that's the brand name. That might just be the type of product that it is. Okay.
I have confirmation from a resident American.
Is it Spackle? Is that what it's called? Right. So what we need to do is bear in mind that Matt was after the bases of the model to be painted in a really bright colour so people could see them, and I managed to resist that. So my compromise was I would paint the edges of the bases a bright colour. So Beau can get like a nice blue colour. So don't ever pick your minis up with your bare hands. Are
you looking to colour code to the same as the original set? Because Jester's light blue, Beau's like a royal blue.
Oh, okay. This is like... I can't even pretend this is royal blue. This isn't royal blue, Russ.
No, that's definitely Jester's colour.
Damn it. Okay. All right, let's just let that
It's
dry.
all right. It's a good base coat for what you're going to finish with.
Yeah. Let's let that dry off, and then we'll find a royal blue. That is ice blue. What's that? What do we want? Like an ultramarine kind of blue, I guess.
See the colour that Charles's names is appearing in the chat app, that really deep blue. It's basically that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that blue you've got in your palette isn't terrible. The darkest one.
Right. I'll just...
Oh yeah, that's ideal.
Okay. All right. So again, don't grab your mini, especially not if you've got paint on your hands, because and obviously be patient and wait for the edges of your model to dry as well.
It's the one time where this ridiculous heat is playing to our advantage.
Yeah. I'm gonna just have to go in and do another coat. Wow, it looks like I've blended the sides of the base.
Yeah, look at that. Accidental genius.
Right? Still a genius.
We'll take it.
Yeah. Take anything that's on offer. Right, so that basically now is an exercise in letting it dry. And what I am absolutely not going to do in this temperature is try and spray varnish it, because that's one surefire way of wrecking a model.
Is Matt actually going to use the miniatures you're painting live on your stream? We like to give him the opportunity to by making them compatible.
Well, we can go one step further than that. Yes, he's asked for the same minis that you're going to get in the Critical Role miniature range. So the intention is he's going to use these guys, or leave it up to the cast. But I think the cast are all super psyched about the model, so I don't see any reason why they wouldn't want to use them. So that paint is actually just not drying. So the only other thing that we're going to do once this is dried, and this might take a little bit of time, so I probably won't do it, is I'll do a dry brush. But let me show you how I'm going to dry brush it on a different model.
While you're grabbing that, I just want to highlight, if anyone's not aware, that Mercer, not Hart, Matt Mercer gave an interview on the DMD Beyond site either yesterday or today, in which he talks about the Critical Role miniatures, and they have a really good chat about them. It's really interesting. Well worth a look.
Okay, I'm going to show you. This was a little. This was not that I painted over the weekend, and I have slightly dry brushed the base, but we can kind of show you the technique by doing it again. So grab your linen white. Actually, we've got some on the palette, so I'm going to just grab a short-haired brush. This is basically this is a brush designed for dry brushing, but you can just get GW do like a small dry brushing brush, as do Army Painter. It's just a round tip brush with fairly stiff bristles. Dip it in the paint so you end up with a bit of paint on the end of it, yeah? And then grab your kitchen towel, and then what I like to do is basically put it into the thing, and then I just go round and round in a circle, alright? And then I start looking to kind of pull it off. Now the way that you know when you have enough paint is you paint the back of your fingernail, and your fingernail has ridges. And if the paint is getting caught on the ridges, then that for basing is going to be enough. If you're going to be actually dry brushing onto your mini, then that's probably too much. So you can see that this is quite a strong highlight, but that's fine for a base, because you want the base to kind of have a bit of life to it. But if I was going to be basically dry brushing not on her clothing, and let's do that in a second, I'd actually go a little bit further and take even more paint off. So when I drew it across the back of my nails, I could barely see anything coming off, and that means that I'm actually, I don't know if the camera probably can't even pick that up, right? I can just about see
you'd
it
be
go.
surprised.
So now I can go in over the top here, and then I can literally just pull down in the direction I want it to, and it will just deposit just a little hint of paint. Yeah, and this is dry brushing, right? So don't, and as with layering on your paints, you can build it up over time. So I always go across the edges of the detail, pull it down. Okay. And that
Do you
is
ever
how I
use
dry
like a
brush.
cork or a special holder for the miniature, or do you just prefer to hold it in your hand?
I have got, so I've got yeah, so I've got these guys that I use, and I put a little bit of double-sided tape on the top, and I stick a mini on sometimes. But what I found when I'm painting on stream is it actually brings the model too close to the camera, so it's a bit awkward. And I use these guys for when I'm painting a model that has a tab on it. But again, that's even worse. But that's quite a nice, comfortable thing, and I just made that out of an old branch out of a tree and a few bulldog clips. But honestly,
it's pretty cool though, isn't it?
Yeah. Honestly, I've kind of just got used to painting, holding on to a mini. I am quite bad about how much I touch a mini while I'm actually painting it. It's a bad habit. But right, so Beau is, I know from experience that this paint takes a little while to dry. It looks like it's dry. It's probably best to leave that overnight, and that lets the sand all set. The side of the base is looking pretty good. So that's Beau, basically. Not too shabby.
That's looking pretty good.
So we got I've got Caleb to do, and those were the models whose poses changed, weren't they? So
yeah.
So yeah, so I'm going to get those guys done. So I've just got Caleb to do. Probably do Caleb. I don't know what's today. It's Monday today. So I won't,
it is indeed.
I probably won't do it tomorrow because Talks Mackin will be on. So I might do it Wednesday maybe. And then I'm all painted up for Gen Con.
Awesome.
Check me out.
Don't forget, this week's talks is the San Diego Comic-Con panel.
Oh, cool. Oh, I haven't seen that, so that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that should be really good.
Yeah. So there you go. So thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you come again. The lovely people, lovely guys over at Critical Role are more than happy to sort of let you know when we're going live. If you're interested in the kind of content we're making, let us know. Give us some feedback. And yeah, next time it'll be Caleb. But absolutely expect over the course of the next, well, forever. There are so many Critical Role minis that I would love to show you how to paint and just basically sit here chewing the fat with Russ and you guys. So until next time, I'm going to say cheerio, and I'll let Russ talk himself out.
Thanks very much for hosting me on, Matt, and cheers, guys, and speak to you all soon, hope.
Bye.